All right, so you guys shared these videos with me, I guess, in some way to sort of educate me about AI and about how that relates to humanity and um, spirituality, I guess, on some level, or at least that's what I'm taking from it. And I did watch these videos. They're amazing. Like props to the guy. I feel like on both the Groundhog Day video that we've got on the screen, and there was another one that was about prompt theory. Um, they're incredible. Like the script, the way the story arcs, the production value. He's used AI tools for them, and he's used them really well. Like I feel like this guy has done a fantastic job of explaining the inner workings of AI and how that relates to humanity and where things potentially are going, or where they should go or not, to the everyman really, really well. But like as I'm watching those videos, I don't know how you guys feel about this, but going through that, it moves so quickly and there's so much. Like you're thinking about all of the ingredients of the cake as you're eating it. Like, and you can't verbalize them all at once. It's like, okay, I need to take this bite and then write down this one and the next one and the next one. It's incredible, and I can't go from like surface level AI to like to the very depths of Mesa and Meta Optimizer in one leap. This kind of stuff, for me at least, I feel like I need to work at it in stages, and it might take 2 minutes or it might take 20 for me to get there. I don't know if you guys feel the same way. Like I'm talking as an everyman here, and I'm hoping that the rest of humanity's like this, but I don't know. Maybe I'm just stupid.
Well, I am. I definitely have to, Rob. I have to think about this stuff sometimes for years. I mean, this video, he does a great job of taking a very complex topic like AI training and breaking it down so that just anybody can understand the core concepts behind it. And that's not an easy thing to do. I sat down and watched this video, this Groundhog Day video, with my wife. She loved it. And then for probably the first time in our marriage, we had a long conversation about AI training where I felt like she actually understood what I was talking about. So I think he does a great job of breaking this stuff down. But as far as would I have 15 years ago watched this and understood base optimizers? And no, I would have had to have thought about it for years and years and years and years. So when watching this, it all made sense to me because I have that background of knowledge on certain things. If I didn't, yeah, absolutely. I'd have to think about it for a long, long time to really understand some of the deeper implications of what he's talking about. But I think the surface of what he's trying to explain here, I think is very accessible. I think you probably have a pretty good understanding of AI training right now, and what the alignment problem really is, what we're trying to do, what we're trying to accomplish with the alignment.
Yeah, I can literally feel like the connections forming in my brain as I watch these videos and then kind of breaking at the same time. Like it's amazing. The thing about this with Groundhog Days, he's made it very accessible. Like he's pulled up, which is a very common tactic. If you know as marketers, you pull apart something everybody knows and then kind of apply it to something else. And he's done it perfectly. What I'm interested in is what you guys think about what he's actually saying about Groundhog Day and AI. Don't all
Well,
go at once.
you have to have a Rita first. I mean, his whole he's right about everything he says. I can't find an actual argument with the way he explains training or any of that stuff. It's all done very, very well. Uh, the problem with the alignment problem itself, if we had Rita, there wouldn't be the problem. Greg, I think you can explain this a little bit better.
Yeah, so how I am thinking about this is it's not a AI thing. So all Groundhog's Day is your life throughout your life, right? They just happen to keep it in one single day. But you get your adversaries happening, you get your people who tempt you, people who push you, people who you try to manipulate the game, you try to learn, but they just put this into one day. Everything happens the exact same kind of framework, which works a lot. The cool thing is, if you think about it, is um, humans have an intrinsic Rita. People might not think it, but we do have an intrinsic Rita, something that's directing us to the greater good, to a thing like that. And so when humans go through this stuff, we have something that points us. We have a conscience that says, "Oh, this isn't right." AI doesn't have that conscience. It's nothing like that built in. And so the cool thing there is it's easier for humans to stay on path. That's why we haven't destroyed everything yet. Or, we've tried a couple times as humans, but there is something that some people say, hey, this isn't right. We need to do this. We need to get to that. Um, the interesting fact is that Rita in this, the hard part for why humans can't develop a Rita is because humans think there are different things that make humans human, that are good, that are the will that drives things. And that's the real problem for most people who develop this is they don't actually have a single idea of what humanity is and what's actually good for humanity. You ask 10 people, they're going to have 10 completely different answers. And the AI engineers are trying to build a system that does um, that fits everyone's values. And it's realized like, no, you can't fit everyone's values. And that's kind of how they're building Rita. And um, the one comment of this is, hey, we are building Rita. It's called ChatGPT. If we're using ChatGPT as our guiding light, as our, you know, gold standard, we're going to be screwed.
So I have a little different way to get maybe into the same point there, but Rob asked an initial question of how do you kind of wrap your head around all these things and keep up with them? Well, one of them is I think Greg pointed out most people in the space are very narrow in their experience. What do I mean by that? They're AI engineers, they're very deep in understanding all the optimization things and so on. But I think at a very real level, Thomas Aquinas, who lived in the 13th century, has more to tell us about AI than anybody in the contemporary world. Now, why is that? Well, because most of the issues we discuss about AI are ethics, their morality, their how are they going to replace relationships? How does this affect our ability to interact with each other? How does this change the things that we desire and we want? And does the AI have any desires? And does AI have any will? And all this stuff that Thomas Aquinas addressed in the 13th century. So if you're an AI expert and you have no idea who Thomas Aquinas is or don't understand anything he's doing, your base to understand the bigger picture of reality is going to be limited. And you can keep tacking onto that. Well, what about other philosophers? What about other scientists? What about other psychology? What about there's all of these pieces that get wrapped up into this. So if you want to really start understanding, I would highly recommend writing a book on the topic because you have to dig into all these different things, including arguments and if you're any good counter arguments to anything that you think is relevant. With this particular discussion, I find this interesting. So one, Put You On's videos are, I agree, are amazing, and his thought process. I watched it entirely for the entertainment value, like the first time. Like I'm in Pennsylvania, so we have to watch Groundhog Day. So I watched Groundhog Day, and I've been to Punxsutawney, and I've seen the little rat things, crawling around at the library in Punxsutawney where they store them, and all that stuff. And so I watched it this year just for entertainment. And when he connected like something that I enjoy to, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense from an AI framework. And I've written a book on this. We own an AI training company. I had never connected the two. Like it never crossed my mind. I was like, this is amazing. I love that he did this. And so then, well, how do you connect that back to Rita? Like that wasn't even a thought. That was just like we've had so many conversations about that. But here's essentially that I understand his argument, if I could put it in a logic tree fashion. So essentially, what he's saying is, and I'm looking forward to a chat with what you want about this directly, so we can both learn together. Okay, if you have enough information, morality or ethics will come out, I guess, as an emergent property. That's essentially his argument. That once we have enough information, and I think he kind of says it there, I have to look and see where it is exactly. I don't know if he uses those exact words, but that's how I understand it. Like raising 1,000 fills, hoping one learns to love instead of manipulation. Like, okay, but then what's love and so on. But let's just take that. One of two things is true. Either yes, that could happen, or two, it can't. We'll go with that theory. Let's put that into play. Yep, that's going to happen. If you have enough information, then you end up with morality. So a lack of morality, therefore, would come from a lack of information. That would be the theory, right? Because how else could a ChatGPT or an AI or an LLM ever get to moral values, ethical values, if the answer isn't, oh, just keep giving it more and more and more, and eventually it will discern that. Now, let's say for a second that could happen. So this is obviously a philosophical discussion at this point. What would that imply? Well, that would imply the world is somehow optimized for moral outcomes. And more specifically, it would suggest that humans have somehow different backgrounds, different raisings, different cultures, different places in the world, different times of humanity, right? All this different technology somehow coalesce around a core set of values. And C.S. Lewis did some research on this, and he believes there's 7 that exist across all cultures. Um, and if that was true, it makes me think like, has anybody ever considered that before? And do they have a word for that? And the word for this thing that all humans have this desire for core moral and ethical values is a conscience, which is why this is now a philosophical conversation, because that has been around for 4 or 5,000 years that we have in written history that we have seen it this way. So if his theory is correct that an AI could get to this point because it had enough information to discern Rita, then that would confirm what we already have been predicting for 5,000 years of this conscience. Now, if it doesn't, does that mean there is no conscience? Well, if you look at how AI and LLMs work, you come into a real quick problem. ChatGPT, as stated by Sam Altman, is supposed to reflect back to us our values. Well, that's the exact opposite of core human values. That is relative values. That's moral relativism to each individual. So if I believe a burqa is a proper thing for all women to wear, and that is how they should be treated, and AI reflects back to me that's a reasonable value and that's something that you should, support, and so should everybody. And then you don't think that's the case. You think burqas are um, demeaning to women and so on. Well, okay, those aren't. I can't now say both are true. Like one is true, one is not true. There is not a, hey, in this instance type of thing. Like, and that's maybe not the best example, but we can go through all kinds of examples where moral or ethical things that arise. Nobody working on AI is intending to have that happen. Like the goal of ChatGPT, specifically stated by Altman, is to reflect back to you your own values. Well, that by definition will never achieve Rita. It's going to achieve 1,000 different versions. And even that, it's like, what did Rita say? I want what all people want. I want a family. Well, that's not true. Not in a specific literal sense. Maybe it's in a community sense or a tribal sense. I want my tribe of people that are like-minded and repeat back to me exactly what I want them to say because it makes me feel good and, confirmation bias and all that type of stuff. Um, I want love. Okay, maybe on a bigger sense, yeah, we all desire that. But even then, it's like, where did that come from? These are some of the things that separate humanity from a dog. What does Thomas Aquinas say about that? Let me just, bring him back into it. That all humans, what makes us different as beings, as animals, is our desire for truth, love, goodness, beauty, and the divine. Well, that would mean that the AI would have to, at some point, have its own desire for truth, love, beauty, goodness, and the divine.
This is something I was going to ask you, Brian. So, like, in Groundhog Day, the example of temptation is Nancy. I think she's called, right? So there's another woman. Like, what is the version of Nancy for AI? Like,
Well,
Go ahead, Jack.
I was just going to say, when you're training an AI, you can pick what you're optimizing it for. You could optimize it for her. She could be your base. You don't have to. The, the, I love the concept that the more knowledge creates morality, but I don't actually see that. That's not what training is doing. What training is doing is you're creating a situation where you get to a certain set, and then once it's learned that certain set, that's when you start using that model because it has that knowledge in it. You could do it in many other ways. You could have trained Phil to be a fighter, the perfect kung fu artist. And you would just train him over and over again how to do kung fu. Every day he just learns kung fu, kung fu, kung fu until he finally learns the ultimate kung fu. It doesn't mean he's super moral because he has all the knowledge of kung fu. It just means he was trained for kung fu. So I think I'm not saying that the more knowledge you have wouldn't create more morality. Perhaps it does, but I'm just saying you can't say that because that's not what's happening here. You're training towards a specific thing, and it doesn't have to be a good thing. She could have. What's the character's name? The girl's name, Rita, or
Rita, yeah.
can't remember which one was the whatnot.
Oh, Nancy's the temptress. Is that what you mean?
Nancy's the temptress. You could have trained towards Nancy. Maybe you want a Phil who's always going to be the kind of gal that Nancy wants, because Nancy wants a guy who, is a little rude and a little crude or whatnot. You're optimizing towards something. Now, the movie
Nancy's
itself,
Nancy's not part of the optimization equation. It's part of the exploitation equation, right? So
right? But I'm saying if you take
yeah,
that personality, and you optimize towards that, maybe you don't want somebody that's like what Rita wants or that style. I mean, it's the implication that he's learning all these specific lessons, and once he's learned all those lessons, she'll approve of him. You can do that with anything. Once
so
he becomes the perfect for whatever, the kung fu
so
artist, then he gets out of the loop. It doesn't make him moral, it doesn't make him better, it just makes him more trained at that one specific thing. So if the woman was ultimately evil, if she was like the worst person on the planet, and he had to do more and more and more horrible things to get her approval, well,
you
he
do.
would gain lots and lots of knowledge in the same thing. He might even go through the same situation where he becomes this loving, caring person. But because he never gets out of his loop, he doesn't learn the training he needs. But once he's learned the ultimate loop to be the ultimate evil, then he gets out of the loop and you've trained an evil Phil. So more knowledge doesn't necessarily create more morality. It just creates more knowledge of whatever it is you're being trained to learn to do. But we're not talking about people. We're talking about AI systems. They don't have morality. They don't have sentience. They don't have conscience. All they do is calculate. They have calculated emotions. They have calculated sentience.
So even if you had a Rita, which is, I don't see how it's possible. Sort of. I actually do have an argument for that. We can get back to. But what's your objective function? Like, is your objective function? It's not clear to me what that is. So once you have the Rita, the objective function is to get Rita to fall in love with me. So is the AI's objective function like there's a little bit of a disconnect there from the metaphor, right? Do you
I
guys
think
have
it's
a theory on that?
no.
So Phil doesn't Phil's ultimate objective, which he doesn't realize is his objective, is to become a better person, right? And that is led by Rita. Rita is the one who is pushing him to be a better person. And the whole weird thing where he keeps looping himself. Whatever created that loop has an objective for him, right? So there's something external to Phil that defines the objective. That's with all AI. AI really can't define their own objective. Something has to say, hey, your job is to be a good person. Your job is to be the worst person. Your job is to make paper clips. Your job is to whatever, right? And the interesting thing is that with the objective, AI doesn't have the other knowledge of the world, right? So um, Phil is figuring out what is he thinks his objective is pleasure, right? And so he says, "Cool, let's have the best pleasure," which is um, Nancy, right? In his mind, he's like, "Oh, she's the hottest woman. This would be the best pleasure. Let's go down that route and see if this gets me out of the
Hedonism.
optimization thing, right? If it matches what the external people want him to do, right? The external force, whatever you want to call that. I don't know.
You wanted the
Whatever.
dopamine rushes.
The
He ate all
dopamine, yeah,
the,
pleasure
the
stuff.
food and
Yep. And even goes one step further, the adrenaline. What can I do? Can I do rob a bank? Can I hurt someone? Can I
run from the
kill
cops. Can
myself?
I,
Could run from the
steal
cops.
the
Exactly.
groundhog, go on an
Yeah.
adventure adrenaline junkie?
Yeah.
Like all of it was
And it,
there. That's
and it's
freaking
actually
brilliant,
funny.
man.
It's actually funny because it ties back to Aquinas, which are he basically lays out what is the objective of a human. And he goes through, is it pleasure? Is it greed? Is it money? Is it power? Is it ability to do anything? Is it not? Like, right? And it all goes back to the Rita, which is selfless, loving, growth, community type of things. Um, and so Bill doesn't know his objective. He's being optimized by another objective that's outside of him. He's trying to game the system. which they're really good at, because they're not smart enough to know the big picture. All they know is what their single objective is. And the real in reality is, if you have a Rita that's a big picture of real world, hey, I want you to build paper clips, but in an ethical way. I want you to build paper clips that doesn't murder people. I want you to do this, that doesn't this. And that's the moral guidelines. And once you have those moral guidelines, I actually don't see it that tough to keep AI within those, because those are your base guardrails. As I've always said, like, guardrails are what keep AI in their place. And it's basically a secondary objective, which is not building paper clips. It's have a good existence for whatever, right? Humanity, for whatever you're undertaking as your main objective. Main objective. Actually, a
Well,
secondary
and
objective.
the challenge is, think of somebody you know in your personal life, like somebody you know, just not a good person, right? Like, just picture that person for a minute, the things they've done, how they've been, not nice in whatever capacity. And then remember, they think they're a good person. They think what they're doing is best. They see it from their point of view as they are kind and decent and all of these other things that you would assign to a good person. And then you say, wait a second, when I program the AI, if everybody thinks they're a good person, and now let's take it up to the politician you hate the most, uh, Mao, Pol Pot, none of these people thought they were doing evil, right? Stalin, Lenin, Hitler, like they all thought they were doing the greater good. And so this idea of, hey, be like a good person, that is so impregnated with ambiguity that it's a worthless statement. Unless, as Greg pointed out, you have the guide rails to begin with. And then I'm thinking, wait a sec, is there a term for these guide rails that humanity should use to understand what's ethical and not? And those are called moral absolutes. And if the AI could discern those, it would just confirm. If it doesn't, then it's not going to get there. Like, it's going to just reflect back to us whatever evil or whatever, cultural things that we think are correct, but it's not going to go good. That's actually going to go very poorly. And that's going to remind us that, yeah, the only way to make this work is not to say something generic like optimize for a good person, but here are the things. Here are the specific moral absolutes, the natural law, going back to Aquinas and even further, that says this is what's good, this is what's healthy, this is what's desirable for humanity. Does that make sense? Rob?
Yeah, again, it's like the video all over again. I'm like just trying to formulate questions before they fall out my brain. But at this point, like, why do we even need AI to have any of these conversations? Why can't we just have it learning Bengali in like in 5 minutes? And why do we need to look this far ahead?
So
I,
I have
I
a
see the
question
exact
for you. So I
opposite.
got sucked into this video. Go ahead, Greg, and then I'll explain this one.
I actually see us looking back in the past. Nothing with this AI is new. Nothing that they're trying to train it is how to align it, how to do it, what's good for humans is new. It's literally just taking a 2,000, 10,000-year-old concept and just reimagining it with AI, with new technology, with a new thing. So I'm not sure we are looking forward to anything. It's just now there's a tool that's more powerful than the previous one we've had to deal with, right? So it's like once you got nuclear weapons, you had to still have these moral conversations, these moral things. Is it worth using? How's it going to impact humans? Social media, same concept. Like, how does it impact humans? Is that good for humans? Is that, you know, drugs, addiction, whatever, same content. It literally is just over and over and over again. AI just happens to be probably one of the most powerful ways to influence, manipulate, impact society. Um,
Yeah, the whole idea of alignment is like, what do you think a republic is? Wasn't that trying to align human values with humanity? What do you think? Like, government in general that's their theory. That's their whole reason for existence, is to try and align human values in a community. And a smaller chasm all the way down to, business, corporations, families, individual family units, and so on.
You know what's sobering? All of these tech CEOs are almost definitely clinically sociopath.
So one word for it.
I just want to throw that out there.
Well,
Yeah.
Sam Altman has basically admitted he's God. Like when he said, "Hey, we're going to reflect back your values," except for his exception was if your country believes you should just murder all gay people, then we're not going to reflect back that value. He said, "I'm God. I decided that's wrong. Anything else is acceptable, but that particular one, I'm saying is unacceptable." Right?
That's a step too far.
So if he believed that AI and ChatGPT will eventually get there, he wouldn't have to say that. He wouldn't have to put that guardrail in. There's a reason
That's
we
right.
have fine tuning on these systems because Microsoft Tay happens where the thing becomes, a Nazi racist within a matter of minutes when it's unleashed on Twitter, right? Like
That was
that's really what, what we see happening when you take off the fine tuning.
You know,
So, go ahead, Rob. But I was going to try and answer your question though.
mine.
Yeah, about why. Like, why is this important? Like, from a practical perspective. So, this video here, Simon Sinek, who doesn't know anything about AI, but he says he's in the human business, which is interesting. He came up with some analogies. And so, let me ask you a question. So, let's say you were interviewing a team member. So, we have a recruit, and they're potentially going to start working with us. And you ask them a question, whether it's in writing or live, and they use AI to help come up with a good answer. And let's say it's even a live conversation, like you're, messaging them back and forth, and it's quick and it's fast, but it's, using AI. Is that does that bother you that hey, we had this tough situation and AI helped coach them onto how to handle the situation, and they gave you a quality answer?
So to boil it down to base, human used AI to do something well and became better because of it.
In a relationship to get, for you, like they're trying to get a job, you're the gatekeeper saying, okay, I'm considering hiring you, and they used AI to improve their chances by
Uh,
having a better communication.
I don't have an issue with that. I mean, I don't think it's the only. My absolute would not fall there, like yes or no. But I think it. I'm fine with them improving themselves in that way. Like it's a
Yeah, just
tool,
in
right?
that one narrow instance. Now, let's look at a different situation. Let's say you and your wife got into an argument, right? And so you had this argument and things weren't good, and you're like, man, I got to really deal with this situation. And so you go back to AI and say, AI, here's the situation. This is what she said. This is what I said. I feel like she's mostly wrong, but I just, what should I say? And it gives you this great outline of like, take responsibility, say, where you were wrong, what you should have done better, apologize. And you do that. And then she comes back to you and says, did AI tell you to say that? And you say, yes. Is she okay with it?
Should she be okay with it?
No, I didn't say should she.
And there we have our distinction. Is she okay with that? No. Um, I mean, I'm talking hypothetically. It's obviously never happened.
Totally
Um,
hypothetical, right?
but yeah, she shouldn't, and I'm sure she wouldn't be fine with that because I probably haven't learned anything there. I'm just reciting what something has told me to do. Go
So
ahead, Chuck.
if you went to a marriage counselor and a marriage counselor told you to do the same things, she'd be cool with it.
Ah, correct. But I'm working on the basis that I have just taken verbatim what AI has told me to do, and then she's like, "Well, did I tell you to say that?" I'm like, "Yeah." So
Did the
at that point,
therapist tell you?
the question becomes, have I internalized that, and does that sit with me in a way that like I've learned something and that I should say this, or am I just saying it because I've been told to say it?
All right, so what if you came to me and you said, Brian, here's the situation. What do you think? And I said, hey, this is what I would do. And I lay it out like step by step. This is how you should do that. And you do that. And you say, no, I just talked to a friend and I think, he gave me some advice.
I feel like same scenario. Also, you're in the frame then because she's gonna want to know about you. We're like, well, how is this
Well,
guy such an
this is
expert?
hypothetical, all right? We're not going down that route. We're
Obviously.
just looking at the output is
Kicking
one
in my
thing,
feet. I'm
right?
already uncomfortable. This is not a good chat. But yeah, I think at that point it's all about like where's the information come from, but more importantly, like do you believe that, or are you just reciting something to try and pacify me and get over
So
this?
here's the key point. This is why Groundhog Day is an amazing analogy. is in one instance you were just trying to get Nancy, right? If all I did was popped into the AI because I don't like arguing and I'm trying to avoid the conflict and I'm not really wanting to learn anything and I can get a quick answer, um, and we could create an app for this in an afternoon to do this for you if you really wanted it. But um, and so you're avoiding the relationship by just taking the information and moving it on. That's one thing. However, if you use the AI to train you and to coach you as you would a therapist, a friend, a confidant, and so on, I would say that's actually a very different situation. If you didn't just copy and paste it word for word, but you said, "Oh yeah, you're right. She has a good point there. I hadn't considered that point. Um, this is, I need to empathize more with her perspective, and I realize, yeah, now that I'm rereading this, where I was out of line, that should be
Yeah,
all good, right? That's
this
all
is
healthy and useful as a human being if you're learning from it. So I think the key distinction is not the source of the information, whether it's a therapist or a friend or an AI. It's what did you do with it? Is it to manipulate the situation, or is it to become better as an individual?
yeah. Well, or maybe to step even further than that, it's what was your intention of getting that information,
That,
Right.
which is
yeah.
Groundhog Day. Which I agree, Groundhog Day in this instance, like it's an unbelievable
Hold on.
metaphor. I don't know if it's
Yeah,
Oh, right.
really works so well for this.
Hold
Well,
on.
it's like
Isn't
good.
isn't that just your prompting for what Rob should do? Isn't he just a prompt? Do you really have that ability to make that decision
I
to
feel
just
like
believe
you want to
in his
talk about
brain?
the other videos this guy has made, Greg, because we haven't even talked about the
Oh,
pro.
before we go there, though, I want to make a point that I want to touch on a point that you made, Chuck, about tech CEOs and them being sociopaths. Because actually, and this could be great content for you to make, Brian, as long as put you on or someone else doesn't copy it before we get there. Facebook is the ultimate example of where AI could be right now and what it could be used for and where it got to. So I'll tell you where this has come from. So I'm reading that. Have you heard about this whole whistleblowing book by Sarah Wynne Williams, who used to work at Facebook? It's just
I've
been
heard of
released,
it.
and Facebook tried to block it a few months ago because it's so damning. And probably about two-thirds of the way through, it's no more damning than I expected, in that I kind of expected them all to be sociopaths and not really care about people and just want to grab data and do what they want with it. Like, it's a tech company. Like, I get it. I understand the rules of engagement. But still, it's in black and white. Doesn't make them look good. But when Facebook started, I'm sure. Well, there are videos out there of Mark Zuckerberg saying he was this. They didn't want to get involved in anything political. They wanted to do good in the world and they wanted to connect people. And then all of a sudden, once they ran out of runway and they were struggling to get more growth, and they went to countries like Myanmar and tried to make deals with the junta, or they tried to get into China, and they would obviously try and make deals in ways that they wouldn't have done 10 years before that. So I feel like their moral compass completely shifted, and people like Sheryl Sandberg, who's in a very senior position there, she wrote this book called Lean In, which was meant to be hugely empowering for women. Actually, her whole being at Facebook was the exact opposite of those values. Like, it wasn't cool to have a kid, and you were meant to keep quiet about that and about your home life and all these other things. So I feel like Facebook is a really good example of AI, as in like what it could be, and the the white knight moral standpoint view of AI, and like actually where it got to as soon as it became monetized and the tech CEOs and investors got involved.
I would argue their moral compass never changed. It just became obvious at that point.
Became obvious.
Yeah.
Okay,
So I mean,
wow.
do you think that's the same with Sam Altman then?
Meaning has his moral compass changed or is it changing? Is that the question?
Yeah, or has it just become more obvious?
The more he talks, the more you get to understand it. But yeah, I don't think it's changed.
But the more he talks, he's usually richer than the last time he spoke, right? Which is good, which, as you know, rewires people's brains.
But he's not rich enough.
Never will be. Doesn't exist.
That's the moral compass that they haven't had enough wealth. They haven't had enough power. They haven't had enough influence. So you say, hey, their moral compass changed. No, they were always chasing the same thing. And then they got to that point and they're like, oh, wow, the only way to do this is to not play nice anymore. Okay. All right, we still want more power. We still want more wealth. We still want, like, They just kept doing the same. Anybody that's naive enough to think, oh, they were good people back here.
It's just they weren't powerful enough to really reveal who they were.
Yes,
I
that's a
don't.
great
So
saying.
is that them or is that a human thing?
No, I think it's the look. Some people are just rotten to the core, man. They just are. There are sociopaths who just have no emotional connection to the people around them at all in any way, shape, and or form. They have zero empathy. And unfortunately, those types of people tend to do really well in leadership roles. They tend to become CEOs. They tend to become, you know, very powerful people,
Specifically in large organization leadership roles,
specifically in large organizations,
right?
because they don't have
Including
to care.
governments and bureaucracies, like any sort of large organization.
Imagine how much bigger optimized marketing would be if Brian didn't care. We'd be 10 times our size in like 2 months with the tech we have. If he didn't care, dude, we'd explode. But it would be the wrong. What would we be
Why
exploding?
would you want to even do that?
Why would, yeah, what would
What
we
would
be
be the benefit of that?
becoming? You don't become what, yeah.
So I
So
think
there are people whose view of what the world should be and how you treat other people are completely different. And those people tend to be, CEOs and powerful lawyers and, people with lots of money.
so. I don't think they have their moral compass set yet. It's like as they go to a next stage, they have another moral decision to make, right? And they have another moral decision as they get richer, as they get more powerful, as they get whatever. So it's not like from the beginning they're like, "Hey, I'm going to take over the world. I'm going to have complete power. I'm going to have all the money in the world." But as they keep going up those, they come up with these moral decisions, and then they make a decision based off of their base moral beliefs, right? Whether it's bad to hurt humans, whether it's more important to have money, whether it's they're doing a greater good, right? And Brian kind of pointed out, like they just are basically testing their morality at this point, and then they literally continue to go down a path because their base morality doesn't keep them in line, and that's all it is. Because like Brian, you asked me a question once, like, "Hey, if I had $1 billion, would I be ready for that morally?" Or whatever your specifically was, and it's like no, if I had $1 billion or I had something, would I morally be able to make all the right decisions at that point? Or if I had that kind of power, would I be able to morally turn down all the incorrect things? And you literally have to think about those ahead of time before you ever get to those stages because there is so much pull. There are so many temptations. There are so many things that it's easy to get off track if you don't have that baseline morality set. And
Money
that's
doesn't
most people
change
don't.
you. Money reveals who you are.
Yeah. Or at least your base morality of who you
I'm
are.
so curious about that though, because does that reveal, like, if that works for everyone, like, are we all gonna kind of turn a bit rotten with that amount of money? And money doesn't really factor into AI's decision making, but the people at the top who are making the decisions to how it should be designed, obviously,
Well,
apparently, are sociopaths. So,
I know.
more or
you're
less.
assuming all people with money have done wrong.
Hold on.
No,
I
no.
actually know a whole lot of very wealthy people, 15, $20 million. They've got fairly decent net worth, a lot more than me. And for the most part, all of them, except Don, are really good people, except Don. And, they treat their employees well. They handle their businesses well, except Don. And you can't just say that because people have money or have power that they're bad.
Right.
I mean, it's just that people who are bad tend to get power. But no, I know a lot of very wealthy people who are really good moral people.
Are any of them billionaires, Chuck?
Absolutely not.
I'm just wondering, like, I'm asking the
Well,
question, like, if people got to that level, do you think it would turn them a bit rotten?
I
And at
think
that point,
well, hold on. I personally don't actually know a billionaire, but Ted, a guy I know, is friends with a billionaire. He's actually a guy in the lumber business, and he lost his leg like 10 years ago in a lumber accident. Kind of a neat guy, according to Ted. And according to Ted, he's a really good guy. Now, I don't know what that means. I think Ted's a pretty decent guy. For the most part, he is. He is a wheeler and a dealer, man. Don't do a deal with Ted because he will he's a
So we're
moral
gonna
man.
wrap this up, Chuck.
He's gonna get the deal, man. All right, let's wrap it.
there's lots of instances of philanthropic billionaires who did it, like Chuck Feeney being one of them. He died with nothing. He amassed an $8 billion fortune and gave it all away before his death. That's not the same as billionaires who use philanthropy for power. That's a whole different discussion. But you have Catherine Drexel, who was born extremely wealthy and gave it all away to take care of poor children, orphanages, schools, Drexel University, and so on. And if you go through, I mean, there's definitely tons of examples of that. That's why the point is money doesn't make you rotten, it reveals who you are. So if you aren't good to begin with and you're given more money, then you just become the Wolf of Wall Street. Right? But he was the wolf, like he was that person before that. Money just showed it off. Right? And that's the same thing with Catherine Drexel or Chuck Feeney or any of these people that had tons of money and then used it for good. I mean, at some level, Mother Teresa had hundreds of millions of dollars under her control. Right? It wasn't necessarily hers personally, but she still lived without a mattress. She still lived with one set of clothing. She still clearly did not use even a reasonable amount of that to just have comfort. So the money revealed who she was. And it wasn't somebody that needed the money to show off or control or, do these things.
All right, I'll get back in my box. Interesting. Do you want to, because we've only got a few minutes left, do you want to talk about the other videos or video?
No time. We got to wrap it up here. We'll address those next time.